Welcome back to Guild Wars Prophecies. The first thing that we're going to get going on here is party selection. This is the part of the game where you can start having these henchmen that are available. They're kind of second tier named characters. You can add them to your party as you go through the game. Some of the first tier named characters that are a lot of the NPCs that you've dealt with, like Devana, Menlo, Sin, Aiden, you can start adding them to your party later on in the game. And then something that's added into the game much in later expansions is you can actually have something called hero slots, where you can actually add like other characters that you've created into the game. They're still controlled by the AI, or sort of. You have some control over them too, but we'll talk about that when we get there. Briefly, I stopped by the die trader earlier. I haven't had a die drop in Post-Searing yet. If I remember correctly, going through all of this, I do get one good die. It was interesting for me to note that everything has pretty much normalized to baseline again, including stuff that used to be under baseline. You used to be able to get some of those dies for 35, 50 gold on the trade market, and those are back up to the baseline price just because there aren't enough people playing to drop that market down. We just finished turning in the King's Messenger and picked up the reply quest, the King's Message, which will take us right back out to Ambassador Zane, who we haven't actually met, but that's who technically that quest that we got when we first entered Post-Searing was. Then from Simon the Scribe, we got Counting the Fallen, which we need to go to Ashford and pick up the census book, which is most likely left in the ruins of the town gathering place somewhere out there. This is the Zunlai agent. This is not guild storage. This is account storage. All of my characters have access to this. You have to pay to get access to it, and then you have to pay an extra fee to get the materials storage panel that allows you to maintain huge stacks of materials that are used for crafting. Because this is shared storage, that's why I've got piles and piles and piles of runes, signets, insignias. No, that's not. It's insignias and runes, if I remember. Or no, or it's insignets. I can't remember. Different ones do different things. And that's one of the main ways that you actually improve your character in the later game. I'm not going to mess with it now. There's no point in messing with it until you've got a set of armor that you're going to be using for quite a while. I don't know if I'll add anything even in this part of the game. I'll probably wait until I hit the Shiver Peaks, because in the Shiver Peaks I can get a set of armor that, unless there's still someone doing what used to be called a Drox run, which is someone who will, a high tier player who will escort lower tier players through a long run from one section of the game to a high level section of the game that's connected by a direct route to a low level section, but is inhabited by high level mobs. But anyway, you can get a run down to there. I've never been high enough level to do it. But that run will take you to a place where, one, you will get the location on your map, and two, you can get the highest level armor for Prophecies. And go ahead and get that, and then you can go ahead and work on putting, your most powerful enhancements on it, so on and so forth. That's really the key to your power is, your skill sets, because you can pick 8 skills to go out for each run. You can reconfigure them whenever you want inside a town, but you can only have 8 skills. That's why builds is a very important part of this game. And then you can add to your stats by enhancing your armor. Let's see, I missed one thing going back a little bit. Supply agent. Oh yeah, well I ended up talking about it anyway. I was talking about the armor merchants. I don't have a very good build on this character right now, and of course I'm still using the Crichton Armor that I got. I've got the funds. Probably sometime later I'll go ahead and figure out my first armor upgrade. So, you know, it's kind of funny we went to all that trouble and we're going to be replacing it so soon. But I'll cover that more later. This little meeting right here between Prince Rurik and Ambassador Zane is kind of setting up the plot for the entire first half of the game. Which is that King Adalbern, Rurik's father, doesn't trust the Crichtons, doesn't want their help. But the bottom line, I mean, you can look around. Ascalon was already pushed back by the Charr to hiding behind the walls. The Charr were already threatening to overrun the city, and then they used, and this hasn't been revealed, but we'll get to that in a little bit, they used the Cauldron of Cataclysm, which is an ancient Titan artifact, and basically trashed all of the area of Ascalon. There's nothing left for Ascalon, period. Okay, turning in the King's Message, and then we'll be picking up the first quest from Zane, which is helping the people of Ascalon, and then another quest, the Ambassador's Quandary. One of those ties in. Rurik wants to accept the help from the Crichtons. Kryta is the nation that lives across the Shiver Peaks, those snowy mountains that are on the border of Ascalon. Kryta was the primary opponent of Ascalon in the Guild Wars, which is something that happened, ended about like 20 or 30 years prior to the events of Pre-Searing, which was 2 years prior to where we are now. And was, I mean, it's all part of the lore. It's nothing that's ever really active in the game, mainly because they redesigned the game, but they kept the title Guild Wars. So Kryta was an enemy of Adalbern. We'll get into Adalbern's history at some point because that's pretty interesting too. So Kryta was able, when the Charr launched the Searing against Ascalon, the whole point was to get Ascalon out of the way, and then the Charr basically overran Ascalon. I mean, Ascalon's already been defeated technically. There's just people still living here who are still part of the resistance, is probably the best way of looking at it. But Ascalon's dead at this point. The Charr marched all the way through the kingdom of Ascalon and then cut through, no, they went across the Shiver Peaks in the north where it was a little bit easier to get across, and then marched south on Kryta as well. And then at the same time they marched through Ascalon to attack the kingdom of Or to the south of Ascalon. The kingdom of Or, which we'll hear about before too terribly long, their Grand Vizier accessed some kind of ancient magic, and again we'll learn more about this later, and basically killed all the Charr present in the kingdom of Or, but also wiped out the entire kingdom of Or, causing an Atlantis-like cataclysm that sunk the entire nation of Or underwater. So, and I'll point out where that location was when we get to it later in the game. But that also rebuffed the Charr, wiped out, you know, a huge percentage of their population and army, so that stopped the Charr from going any further south through Ascalon. Kryta, led by a character that was there, it was mentioned in that text, and I can't remember the name now. Kryta, led by him, started worshipping some new gods called the Unseen Ones, and the power of the Unseen Ones helped them repel the Charr from Kryta while leaving the country, the whole kingdom intact. And so Kryta is now an entire nation of religious zealots worshiping these unseen gods. That's going to become a major plot point later. Incidentally, some of the music that I've been playing in the background on some of these longer trips, this is stuff that's from the game. It's by the composer Jeremy, I believe it's pronounced Soul. I've never actually looked it up. It's either Soul or Soul, something like that. I'm pretty sure it's Soul. This is music that was composed for the game by him. He's a fairly well-known composer, especially video games music. We'll find out if this music is not here by the time you listen to it. That means that it's, even though it's included with the game, it's also separately protected by copyright. We just finished up this little minor quest for Warmaster Grast to kill some gargoyles. One of the other quests that we picked up, the guy who was next to Ambassador Zane, is Witness Rayston. He wants to perform a ritual that will help purify the ground in this area because of all the dead who were killed by the searing. And here's helping the people of Ascalon. The ambassador appears to, mean it. He's delivered a big supply of orphans who Ellen Ripley is taking care of, so the ambassador from Kryta really seems to mean it. He's actually here to help the people of Ascalon, and Rurik wants to take him at his word, and Adalbern wants to send them packing back to Kryta and have nothing to do with them. Ripley is going to send us back to Ambassador Zane to say thank you, so that kind of extended that quest. Titus now has defend the wall for us. That sends us, we're going to go ahead and get that taken care of, because the whole point of that quest is to just introduce the area of the first cooperative mission. Cooperative missions are all launched in towns. Some of them, the entire point of the town is just a gathering area for launching the mission. It's kind of like a staging area for a raid, basically. This is just turning the quest in and we're done with it. Like I said, the entire point was just to get us here so that we could, learn how to launch the cooperative mission. This over here, the Zaishan Scout, this is something that was introduced later in the game towards the end of original Guild Wars' active lifespan. The Zaishan Scouts give you quests that take part in the already existing, primarily the missions. And it gives you like extra people to kill or certain things to do. And you do that, you can do them daily. They're basically dailies, and that you turn them in for extra rewards. We're not going to be messing with that. All of those ruins way off there, it's in the middle of the screen, to Carva's right. That is the ruins of the town of Sirmia. That was well, I just blanked. But anyway, it was, another major town. In game terms, of course, it's very close. In real life, would have been several miles outside of the wall. Like I said, that's the Kingdom of Ascalon used to straddle the Great Northern Wall. They had pushed the Charr back so far into the Northlands. A lot of this area that I've been looking at is you could visit about half of it during pre-searing. I decided not to because it's a bit of a slog, and I just didn't want to spend any more time in pre-searing. Instead of just wandering around exploring too much longer, I just wanted to go ahead and get busy and get going. But you could actually visit a lot of that. And most of those ruins across the wall were ruins in pre-searing too. Those are some of the remains of older civilizations, and I know that gets really confusing, that some of these things were ruins already that were ancient, but some of these ruins were actually, a town that you could live in. ArenaNet didn't do a very good job selling it, and of course I think a lot of it got retconned when they changed the story up. This is just turning in and we get some skills for it. I'll be redoing my skill tree later on, and then again a little bit more showing how you can do all of this. From here, we're going to go ahead and move on to the to Ashford and pick up those quests. Have to, of course, fight our way there. There's devourers everywhere. And here's Ashford. It is now a giant hole in the ground destroyed by the Cauldron of Cataclysm. You can, kind of see the basic shape. We still got the collector, or crafter here. And we have to visit him for Raiston's ritual. He has and of course that's the whole point of this quest, is to show you how you can convert some of the raw materials you collect in the game to higher tier materials for crafting. Here's the remains of the Abbey, now called Sarlacc Sanctum. You can't get into the catacombs anymore. The catacombs are destroyed. Most of them just completely collapsed and filled in. We'll actually run right over the top of the catacombs in an area we'll visit here in a little bit. I mean, the catacombs are literally... There's a couple of little cubby holes that kind of hint at where the entrances were, stuff like that. But the catacombs literally don't exist anymore. They were flattened. So Sarlacc Sanctum doesn't really do anything for warriors. If you are an elementalist, a monk, or a necromancer, you either primary or secondary, you have quests there. But the warrior doesn't have anything. The entire area is overrun with Grawl. Okay, loop around down here. Inside this chest is the census that we need for counting the fallen. And we'll pop right back to Ascalon City and go ahead and turn that into Simon the Scribe. Simon will have another quest for us later on, but we've got to advance the game quite a bit. I'm going to work on trying to get as many open world quests done as possible before I start on the missions, but I'll need to do at least the first mission to open up, if I remember correctly, a pretty big boatload of other quests. And now we turn in Raiston's ritual too, since we got the things that he needed for that. Okay, I want to play some music here while I am rebuilding into a hammer-based spec, and you can watch how that goes. Now we're going to go ahead and head into Regent Valley, which means we have to fight through all these Grawl again and more. Now the good news is coming up we've got, if I remember correctly, a couple of boss battles here, and I'll explain how those work. Let's see. That's all. Where is it? I can't see it from where I have it focused. There he is. Okay, you see that guy in the background, the Charr Shaman, who's glowing with a red glow. This guy. This is a boss. If you run into someone who actually has a name instead of just a, you know, what they are, like Charr Shaman or this, I couldn't read it. I'm looking at the small print right now. I'm monitoring my recording settings. The color of, they're usually a little bit larger, but it's not always. The color the boss glows indicates what class they are. See, here's another one. The other guy was glowing red, indicating that he's an elementalist. This one is glowing indigo or purple, indicating that he's a mesmer. And what that usually means is that they will have either the same or a similar version of some of the same skills that the player can have. Now that's, you know, the regular ones can too. You know, that's Grawl shamans can heal, and then they have some damage dealing spells too. You're going to run into pretty quick that, you know, a lot of the Charr have fire-based magic. You'll see that quite a bit. One other aspect of the bosses, you'll notice that I've got that little up arrow with a plus 4% now. Whenever you kill a boss or whenever you achieve an objective, a primary or secondary objective in a mission, you get a 2% morale bonus. That morale bonus increases your health, increases your mana pool. I think that's it. I don't think there's anything else that it does. And that applies to your whole party. So, you know, stacking up the morale bonus, you can have up to a maximum of 10, I think 10%. In other words, that's if you can defeat like 5 bosses in the open world and run around with this 10% bonus on everything. Okay, we made it into Regent Valley. The people that we were supposed to pick up and escort were literally just sitting right across the other side of the gate. And here's where I make a mistake. You know, all we need to do is get them back to Warmaster Grast, and so I'm taking the same shortcut that, you know, the one that used to go by the lake and now goes by the giant pile of tar. Excuse me. And I made it over to here and realized that the guys I was supposed to be escorting weren't coming with me. And that's because you have to walk near the person who's leading the patrol in order to get him to latch onto you and follow you. And I just ran by one of the people who were not leading the patrol. So I had to run back, pick up the guy who was leading the patrol to get him to latch onto me, and then turn around and run back again. And once again, we have to fight our way through. You'll notice ahead of us up on the left on a hill, there is a collector. This is a guy who sells some of the new Crichton collector armor. And this is something that I need to explain. I know it probably seems kind of silly at this point that I went to all that trouble to get that Crichton collector armor in pre-searing, and then I turn around and immediately you have to start trying to get better armor, and unfortunately that's just the nature of the game. You can still get the Crichton collectible armor in pre-searing, post-searing, but it's upgraded from what it used to be. It looks the same as what I have, but it's upgraded. And I think just for fun, I'm going to go ahead and pick that up, especially considering I can get now the armor that I would really like to have for one of the next stages of the game, the Gladiator, either the Gladiator armor or the Barbarian armor. I like both of them. I can't get most of it until I get to later areas of the game. Mainly, I think I can get most of it in the Shiver Peaks. In this part of the game, I can get the Gladiator Helmet, but that's it. Oh, another boss, so we can get up to 6%. Notice he's red. We're going to see a lot of fire hitting. Say, he basically did a meteor storm on us. Now, thankfully, I'm equipped with a hammer. All of the rock elementals are very susceptible to hammer damage. I think for obvious reasons. While we were at it, Warmaster Grast also gave us Into the Breach. So that's pointing us to another area of the game that we're going to head, but we're not going to mess with all that much. We've run into Master Ranger Nente again. He has a couple of quests for us. One, he wants us to prove that Melandru's Stalkers are still fine, because he can't see the one that's right next to me. But anyway, basically you have to have one as a pet. Once upon a time, you would lose whatever pet you had and had to go back and get it. And I don't want a Melandru Stalker for the entire game. I want something else, but I haven't spent any time learning what I want yet. So anyway, I showed him my Melandru Stalker, and I didn't lose it because they fixed it. And now we've got the Charr Patrol. We now run all over most of the area that used to be Green Hills County. It's kind of offset a bit. Like I said, we run on top of areas that used to be the Catacombs. The Catacombs were mostly this area to the left of us, but I mean, they're just all collapsed now. You'll recognize in some areas that we run by here in a little bit. You'll see the remains of Baron's estate. Some of the planters, some of the waterways. But, I mean, and that's all we're doing is we're following Nente while he tracks the Charr Patrol, and he basically circles all the way back around and winds up at the back entrance, all the way back around at Ashford Abbey. Not Ashford Abbey, at the ruins of Ashford, where we wipe out the Charr Patrol, which we'll be doing here in just a minute. Something that I hadn't really commented on before, because it's something that I think you can kind of pick up, outside of the game. It's not really ever mentioned in the game. You'll notice, one of the reasons that that you're dealing with areas that used to be the Catacombs is that, of course, there's gargoyles all over the place, and gargoyles were previously only found in catacombs. I guess you could argue that they were already found in some of the other ruins. A lot of the evidence that we deal with is from Post-Searing instead of Pre. Get out of that area of effect thing. Archers have ignite arrows that are pretty powerful coming from the Charr. The main of my existence when I first started playing the game. I just missed the concept somehow. But anyway, that's back to the gargoyles and the catacombs. So we've got that thing. And you'll notice that there's a major problem with gargoyles right outside of Ascalon City too. Something that I never really talked about is that the catacombs, you know, that area of the catacombs, it looked like, you know, it might actually be a fairly well kept up, sort of. I mean, there were a lot of exposed exposed caskets, mausoleum type area. That is meant, even though they never actually connected it in game, that whole area actually connects back around to Ascalon City. So underneath Ascalon City, there used to be a connection down into the catacombs. That comes into play in Guild Wars 2, even with some of the retcons and kind of moving things around a little bit. But it actually was something that was intended to be part of the original Guild Wars. They just never made it explicit. You had to find out outside of the game. Now I'm going to run back through the area that we were just at. Like I said, you couldn't really move any way back to the left here. So you can see some of the evidence. We're moving through all of the area used to be outside of Baradin's estate. This guy here, he only comes into play for elementalists. So that if you're an elementalist, you're actually sent here, and he has some quests for you. Another boss. As you can see, this one's humongous. He's bright green as opposed to dark green. That means that he has ranger magic, and if you can't really see it from here, we'll target it in a second. That thing right there, that is a ranger summon. One of the things that rangers can do is summon these kind of spirit beings that provide relatively big bonuses to the entire party as long as you're standing within their area of effect. And now we've made it to the breach. This area did exist in Pre-Searing. It was, I pointed it out, not too far from the Baradin Estate entrance to the Catacombs. I pointed out this kind of waterfall and lake area that was real pretty, and I always meant to go by and actually show what it looked like, and I never did. But that's this area. You couldn't go through it in Pre-Searing, but this area did exist. And I think that's where I'm going to start now, because I need to figure out if I want to do some of the stuff in Regent Valley and go grab Fort Ranik next, or if we want to go ahead and head into the breach and map out some of those locations next.